Hello and welcome back to the Sidetracked Sport podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about misunderstandings, myths, and perceptions around para sport. And joining me for today's episode is Didi Okoh, who is a Paralympic and world bronze medalist, which is pretty incredible. And so we're going to be delving into quite a few different topics around para sport and basically what is going on with not understanding some of the simple things surrounding the sports. So, hi Didi, how are you?
All right, Jasmine, not too bad. I'm getting ready for training later. I'm a bit like, I'm like trying to get myself mentally psyched because outside looks like it wants to chuck it down. And I just, yeah.
Yeah, it's not looking like great weather at the moment on the day of recording this, and so hopefully it will hold off for you. And so, do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, your disability, and how you got into the sport?
Hi, I'm Didi. I'm 23 years old and I'm a Paralympic medalist. And my journey in sport started right from when I was little. Essentially, I kind of like got up and ran across the room as my first steps. I didn't even crawl. Now, my parents thought there was something wrong with me. So I kind of guessed that like I was always destined to do something active. Growing up, I was like in every sport you could possibly imagine. I even did like dance, like ballet, tap, modern. I did a lot of artsy stuff like drama, music. And then I fell in love with athletics and did that up to a national level up until the age of 16. And because of that, I was 12 years old when my leg was showing symptoms of something called lymphoedema, but we didn't know what it was at the time, which is essentially where one of my legs is bigger than the other because my lymphatic system doesn't work properly. So because of that, it meant that my athletics, where I was at such a high level and I was winning national medals, I was winning national medals within England and the UK, and then my progression just started to decrease and plateau, and then I started to digress to the point where I used to win national medals in high jump, run nationally in the 800 meters, and then I couldn't cross the 200 meter finish line. So it's like that disparity within a short space of years was actually insane. Like even me looking back at it, like it was just like I woke up one day and just started passing out. It was like, I don't know, like I wish I could tell you why that was the case, but the only reason we could put to it was my body was using so much energy to even carry my leg through on these races or through training. I just couldn't do the same things anymore. Fast forward to when I was 16, I got diagnosed with something called lymphedema, and after that diagnosis, I'd already had a few of what we call cellulitis infections, which kind of damaged my leg further. It essentially caused tissue damage. The cellulitis infection essentially caused tissue damage within that leg. But I've had like 7 of these, so it's like quite a lot. But once you have them once, you keep getting them. So after that, I kind of was cast away from sport in a sense. And I was picked up by the throws team, and they were a real great help in kind of keeping me in athletics, because if it wasn't for them, I honestly wouldn't have kept on going. I was thinking about quitting athletics when I went to university at 19 years old, but I met another para athlete just before I went, and she was like, Didi, I'm not gonna lie, you run like you should be a para athlete. And I was really offended because I didn't see myself as someone having a disability, because I grew up able-bodied my entire life, and I was always told you're very strong, you do this, you can't be disabled. But then like she spoke to me, she was like, well, it doesn't have to be just someone who's like got an amputation or someone who's in a wheelchair. There's so much like variety to this. And if it wasn't for her talking to me about it, then I wouldn't have pursued the athletics down that para route. So that's how I got into para athletics. And then fast forward a couple of years and I managed to get a medal in it. So it's really cool.
That's a really humble way of phrasing it, a medal, as if it's not at the top levels here. We're talking Paralympic medals. It's not a small achievement. Give yourself that credit. And I guess with that, and it's quite an interesting story, you sort of growing up initially not being disabled and coming into, I guess, having to come to terms with actually you are disabled and that's not a negative. You yourself have maybe had to go through the process of changing your own perceptions around like what actually is para sport, and what were some of those things that maybe have changed in your own mind from, I guess, when you were sort of 16, 17, 18, before you considered yourself to be disabled until now, really?
Well, it's interesting because once I got diagnosed at 16, I love watching all sport. I used to watch the Paralympics, Olympics, but once I got diagnosed, it was really interesting. I subconsciously switched off to the para side of things. I actually stopped watching. So say for example, Tokyo 2021, didn't watch it like at all.
Wow.
My parents would put it on and I'd leave the room. Like it was that level of like, well, there's no route for me there. There's no way I could be a para athlete. And there's no route for me in the Olympics. And I just kind of felt like I was stuck in like this middle wasteland of like no sport for me. But I just realized I was feeling sorry for myself. But those athletes that step on the track, whether you're an Olympian, Paralympian, you've all got stuff going on, right? And they don't feel sorry for themselves on that start line. And that's what really counts. And I think having that resilience and that mentality to kind of push through is something that I've taken away from all aspects of sport. I feel like I've always had the utmost respect for anyone who's in sport. I don't think my perception necessarily changed. I think I just had more of an understanding of what a para athlete goes through, because the challenges I go through as an able-bodied athlete were completely different to a para athlete. As a para athlete, I now have to take my health into a much higher consideration than I did initially. Like if I catch a cold, I actually have to have to stop training. And I still laugh about it because I think it's like, for me it's baffling for someone who at like 12 years old would be missing birthday parties to go train and to be missing all these social activities. And now, like as a para athlete, if I get the tiniest cold, I won't go to training, and that's just to protect myself. And it's like those other sacrifices you kind of have to make as a para athlete to get yourself to the top. There's like a different barrier, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. I'd never really thought about that aspect of things like something like a cold could impact you completely differently as a para athlete, whereas maybe an able-bodied athlete, if it's just a standard cold, they might still go to training. They might take it a little bit easier, perhaps, depending on the severity. But yeah, it's really interesting to consider that. It's not something that I would have thought would have necessarily impacted someone. It's a
Yeah, no, I feel like for me, in my personal experience, if I was to go to training with a cold, I kind of then rock up to the next training session even worse, and then I'd have to actually miss a week. So then if I keep doing that and going through that cycle, I'm going to miss more training sessions. So I have to do the lesser of two evils and miss the one training session. Or if it's not too bad, maybe I can go somewhere that's more isolating, or somewhere that's like warmer or things like that, like other things that I could be doing. Because the rest of me, like, I'm fine. Like, physically, I'm fine. But I know for a fact, if I went to training and did a full-blown session with a cold, I'm going to get worse. Like, because my immunity is considerably low with the condition that I have. So,
Yeah, I guess it's that sort of thing of having to battle with your head and how you feel at the same time. Like you feel like you could train, but your head is telling you, no, let's be sensible here. Let's just take the 1 or 2 sessions off, and long term it'll benefit you. And I guess looking at other people's perceptions around para sport, what are some of the things that you've heard them say or seen them say online, in person, that are the most wrong or the weirdest sort of ideas about what para sport is?
that's an interesting one because a lot of people have different opinions. They have so many different opinions on the internet, and I'm just like, relax. Do you know what I mean? Like, just relax. But I would say that, like, it's that participation for me is just like, that will be like, oh, like, well done for participating, or oh, it must be easier because you're a para athlete. It must be easier for you to get to this top stage because there's not as many athletes. No. Do you know how hard it is to get there? In the Team GB alone, you kind of like have to be, if you want to be considered for teams, you're going to have to try and be like top 10 max, really. Like it's such a tough ask to get onto a world stage for any athlete. And elite athletes is only isn't like 0.1% of the population is an elite athlete. Like it's just such a tiny number, and we are part of that number, but I think sometimes on the internet they don't really see it as that. And I guess another thing is when they see someone with a disability that's not presenting, they'll immediately be like, oh, well, they're not disabled, or what's wrong with them, or things like that are just quite insulting. Like, I don't know, my opinion is you wouldn't be claiming you're a para athlete unless you're actually a para athlete. That's my opinion. Because no one wants to be turned into a para athlete. Like, that's not your initial, like, say for example, I guess for me, because I came from able-bodied to para, I had to make that transition, and my dream was always to become an Olympian. That was always my dream, because I was an able-bodied athlete. You always want to be as healthy as possible as well, so you're not trying to like fake it, you're not trying to like get an in. That's what I think really confuses me, is when people go around saying, oh, well, this person doesn't look that impaired. Because there's such a disparity between different athletes, because there's lots of different classifications, which the common public don't know about because it's not talked about. So then that's where those misconceptions come in. And it's a bit of a shame.
This actually brings me really perfectly onto one of the things I wanted to ask you about. You obviously post a lot online about your experience in training, competing, and like wider life as well. And obviously, within competition videos, having a lower limb difference, you compete against other people who are classified within the same sort of category. But that doesn't necessarily mean they all have the same disability or present in the same way as you. You could be competing against people who are maybe amputees or like, and so run with a blade. And so then online, you often get quite a lot of comments of people questioning how you're allowed to run against them, I guess. And if you could try and explain to people who don't necessarily understand the classification systems in as easy a way as possible, how does that work? That you could possibly run against someone who's um, got like a amputation below the knee on one leg.
So if World Parathletics had the numbers in my category, which is a T42, they would 100% split us because, well, I don't know how to word it. It's a hard one because I have my own opinions about it. Like, personally, okay, wait. Just for clarification, I love the fact that I race against the amputees. I don't necessarily think that it's fair on my part. I do think they have a slight advantage. However, I think it's such a competitive race and I'm there to compete. I'm there to compete against the best. And I think it gives me that best opportunity to do that, whether or not I win the race. However, if we had the numbers for the T42 category, they would 100% split it because there is a difference in the impairments, but they're so similar that they can be put together. Does that make sense? So the reason that we're put together is because a T42 has a hip and or knee impairment. So for me, for example, I have a whole leg impairment. My leg is impaired from hip to toe, whereas someone else in that category may have just a hip impairment or things like that. Whereas the amputees, they're an above knee amputee, which means that obviously they're missing their knee joint, which is why it's so similar and we can be put together. But obviously, because what's presented online and through the media and through sponsorships and organizations, it is the amputee athletes. They are the headliners, essentially. Like, even with the mascots, you'll always see someone with an amputation. And so because of that, they immediately see me and the other girl in the race and they're like, why? Even I say I get away with it a bit more because I've got something on my left leg. And a lot of the time that gets mistaken for a prosthetic. I don't know why. It doesn't look like a prosthetic, but it does get mistaken. But the other girl, bless her, she gets slaughtered, like properly slaughtered, because unless you properly look, you can't see her impairment. But she's got one leg that's shorter than the other. By about 7 centimeters, I think. But like, because she blasts out the blocks and all that stuff, because it's not presented very well, immediately the public's like, well, they don't have a very physical difference, so what could possibly be wrong with them? And then rather than these organizations and the sporting organizations actually correct this, they don't. They just let it happen. They don't do any education around it in a public nature, if that makes sense. So it's a tough one.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I guess we see things, say like the Paralympics, for example, come around every 4 years. We see the para sports, para athletes take to the track, the fields, whatever sport it is they do. But there's not really much communication in how classification systems work and actually how each athlete is classified and what that actually means. We hear things like T42 or whatever, and like I think most people listening probably don't even know what that means. And first of all, the T stands for track, and that's something which I think is just goes over straight over a lot of people's heads in the fact that you have T and F, and it simply just means track or field. It's as simple as that. And then the numbers vary depending on the impairment level and how it impacts you day to day. And even that the classification system itself can be really stressful and is a really complicated process. And I actually did an episode a while ago with George Bates, who used to be a GB wheelchair basketballer. He's now the coach for that team because he was told he was no longer, I guess, disabled enough to be classified to play, because
What?
it's a really strange story. So anyone listening, go back and listen to that podcast episode. But basically, yeah, he got declassified, and with wheelchair basketball, you have to have like a certain amount of points of people on the court, and each classification is given a certain number of points. And so the I guess the more impaired you are, the less points you're worth. And you can only have, say, for example, I can't remember what the number is, but say you can only have like 10 points worth of
Mm,
people on the court at the same time. And so he got declassified, that he just wouldn't have been able to play. And I think even that part of the whole idea of parasport is something that we just don't really see or understand much of, because like you said, we see parasport as people who are in wheelchairs or people who have amputations, people who are sort of, I guess, typically look disabled, rather than actually it's quite a wide range of what disability looks like, particularly within sport. And it might show some people that actually you are also disabled. You just maybe, like yourself at the start of your journey, didn't really consider yourself in that way. And it's quite an interesting way to look at it, I guess. And are there any other things that you wish people sort of knew or understood about parasport, or your own journey sort of through into parasport?
I wish the categories were explained properly. I really do. I wish they were explained properly because it would just clear up so much. But like, I guess for people online, it's too many words, so they don't do it. But misconceptions, I think it's like, I don't think they take it seriously. These guys, these are the top level of their sport. Some of these guys they're just so impressive. Some of these athletes, to have that level of athleticism is just incredible. Like, these guys be doing pull-ups and all sorts. I can't do a pull-up. I don't have the arms. But these guys, yeah, everyone's so strong in their own way. But that's because they're an elite athlete, not because they're someone with a disability. Um, like, it never makes sense to me. Because I think a lot of the athletes, they hate hearing the whole, oh, you're so inspirational. Wow. Like, I wish I did something that is inspirational. Like, do you know what I mean? I kind of get it for me in terms of the community I have, because there's no one else with my condition. So I have actually like kind of trailblazed through. And there is now people with my condition now getting classified as para athletes. That was unheard of. So that in itself, that's different. But like, when it's like you've got someone who's literally, they're just competing in their sport and you're just telling them, wow, like, you're so inspirational. I'm just going for a run. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not
Yeah.
that it's not that hard. Like, I get it, I do get it, but like, at the same time, just show it that same level of respect as you're showing other people. You wouldn't turn up to an able-bodied person who runs for a living and be like, you're so inspiring, like the amount of resilience you must have, like I just love it. And I'm just like, what? Like, you wouldn't see that, unless they've been through something crazy. I don't know, like, a lot of these guys, it's just their life and they've kind of learnt to get on with their life. So it shouldn't be like that's the headline of the story. Like, if you're at the Paralympic Games and the headline of your story is you've overcome this, or whatever, like, because of your disability, but you're a para athlete, I don't think it should be there. But I don't know. I don't
It
know.
it often is sort of, I guess, almost the default in people reporting about parasport, particularly because most sports journalists probably aren't disabled, or if they are, a lot of them aren't physically disabled. And so that understanding of actually just going on and on and on about how inspirational and amazing and incredible someone is just for simply, I guess, doing their job, it isn't necessarily seen as, I guess the word is not dehumanizing, but it's sort of focusing on the person's disability rather than them as an athlete, and them as like their incredible achievements on the track as that athlete. And it's bringing their disability almost to the forefront, is what it seems to me. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. If you look at the Olympic versus Paralympic side, the Paralympic guys win so many medals. I'm sorry, these guys, do you know they're winning gold medals, silver medals, bronze medals, like they're winning, you know? And then the first thing is, this one's got a disability of this. How inspiring to overcome that and be on this stage and be able to have this reception that I'm sure they don't get very often. Like, like these guys are elite athletes that are winning medals for the country. Like, highlight that. And I'm not talking on my behalf. I actually, a lot of the time I talk about this and forget I'm actually one of the athletes. I think I'm actually one of the athletes. But like, there's so many people that have won so many medals. Like, I don't know, say Sarah Story, Anna Cockcroft. Like, these guys, like, they're big deals. And I think they need a bigger platform. I just, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, like Sarah, she should really be a household name, particularly because her medal catalogue is actually just mind-blowing. It's almost like incomprehensible. It's like that physically shouldn't be possible. And yet, a lot of the time, I imagine the stories that do cover her are focusing around her disability. And like, yes, she has done some incredibly inspirational things beyond the sport. She has also done some pretty incredible things on track purely because she's an athlete and she wants to be at the top level. And I guess it's trying to shift mindsets in Paralympic athletes are still just athletes at the end of the day and like just want to win. You want to get golds or silvers, bronzes, whatever the target is. You want to be competing at the top level. You don't necessarily want to be inspirational. You just love what you do, and like that's okay because you would never look at, say, an Olympic athlete who is just doing their job and say, wow, you're so inspirational. Like you said earlier, someone who runs maybe a professional sprinter, you wouldn't see them going out to training and be like, oh wow, that's so inspirational. Yeah, it's probably really cool to see how dedicated they are to the sport, but in the same way you would for any athlete, for able-bodied or not. And it's quite interesting, I guess, to see how the reporting in that shifts when you see the Olympics, say in like July and August, and then the Paralympics August, September, and how the stories around them change quite differently, even though at the heart of it, it's all just sport.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can talk on that because I, I actually, I'm actually picturing what I think you're talking about in my head. I think I can see it. I mean, yeah, I can see it. Like the documentaries they do. Yeah. Yeah, 2024, the documentary, Channel 4, you know what it is? Channel 4 do a really good job at broadcasting the games. They do a really good job at highlighting the athletes and putting that spotlight. And I do think that media is becoming increasingly aware and becoming more inclusive. I really do think that. I am seeing a shift. I remember watching, Channel 4 did a documentary, and I remember watching it, and the different athletes that were in the documentary, they're sat with us and we're watching it, and it was all about like how their impairment affects them, like their story. And these stories, like they are genuinely inspirational. But obviously there was a lot of focus on that disability. I remember I went and cried. I left the room.
Oh wow.
I left the room, started crying because I was like, wow, like this is so overwhelming. Like these guys like are really, you know, they've really gone through it to be here. So I can see how it has, I can see how it can have a positive difference and impact. But I would just love to see more of that winning mentality. Like me personally, if you get me, I'm gonna just tell you, look, I'm there to win. I don't care what's happened in the past. I'm here to win. I'm here to bring medals back. That's kind of like what I do the sport for. I don't do it because I developed lymphedema and now it's like my way in. I don't know. Like I do sport because I've always enjoyed sport and I'm very competitive. I'm really competitive to the point where it could be unhealthy. I'm a bit of a sore loser. But yeah, I think the documentaries are good. I think they're good. I'd love to see more on that like winning mentality. Like I'm gonna come home and bring some medals because these guys are gonna do it. They're gonna do it too. So more confidence. But then I guess it's having that platform. And if you don't have that platform often, then what do you do with it? You know? So it's just having those opportunities all year round for those 4 years rather than just like that one time every 4 years. But I'm seeing more of it. I'm seeing more of it. So I'm here for it.
I guess it's trying to maybe adopt the mindset. It seems more of like, okay, say you for yourself, for example, you're an elite level athlete who just happens to also be disabled. Not that you are a disabled athlete, if that makes sense. And it's
Yeah.
kind of trying to take that mindset on board. And I mean, I myself, I'm probably have done things in my own coverage of para sports where subconsciously, like, you're just not aware of maybe how you phrase certain things. And it's trying
I mean, I
to
probably do it. I don't, do you know what I
we
mean?
probably all do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's trying to shift it and so that sort of trickles down to sort of the public who are reading or watching whatever that form of media is, that actually para athletes are still just elite athletes at the end of the day. And I guess also through your own social media, what have you seen in a positive sense of people reacting to your content, sort of showcasing yourself simply as an athlete? How have they reacted in a nice way to those things?
They're very curious, and I like that because it shows initiative and their willingness to learn. So I enjoy like explaining things and stuff like that. And they find it as a way to kind of, it's interesting. Some people like they really struggle with their everyday life, like if you have a chronic illness or things like that. So to see someone else doing it, it kind of gives them a motivation to get out of bed and be like, you know what, I'm going to go and do like a 10-minute walk around the block, or I'm going to go do this or do that. And you know what, maybe I can try and give it a go. Because a lot of the reason why people who potentially could do those things in like, what's the word? They could do those things in like excess, as in like in blocks, kind
Yeah.
of gradually get into sport or gradually get into exercise. But a lot of the time is like they're either like anxious about it, they don't want to be like judged about it in public. If you've got me just blabbering on online and I don't seem to care if I get hate or not, then it kind of gives them more of an incentive to be like, actually, I can go do my own thing and that's actually fine. So I really enjoy that. Like when I get a message and being like, oh, Didi, like I'm going to do this. And I had someone with lymphedema and they messaged me and they're like, I just did a 10K like fun run or something.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I was like, I hope that wasn't due to me because me personally, I will never promote such a thing. But but yeah, no, like I think for me that's what's really important is like people accessing sport, accessing healthy lifestyle and just having fun with it. It's that social side, making those connections. It's not all about being a competitive athlete. For me, I just really enjoy knowing that people are enjoying life.
And on that as well, it kind of brings me into things like the Commonwealth Games, where we see able-bodied and disabled athletes sort of competing in the same arenas at similar times, rather than having things like the Olympics and Paralympics completely separately. What are your thoughts on things like that? Because I guess in one way, it highlights both types of athletes all together, and it sort of normalizes it like we are all just elite. Well, I say we, not me, but you're all just elite athletes. You're all just elite athletes at the end of the day. But is there any part of you that almost, I guess, wishes you did have a separate platform, or do you like it sort of all being together?
Nah, I love it. I'm so excited. And I think I don't want to speak for all para athletes, but it's been the general consensus when talking to them, those who've been selected. It's been very much a case of we're so excited to be with everyone because me personally, I hate the segregation.
Hmm.
I really hate it because now we're going to be on that same platform. We're going to be having that same broadcasting rights. And it's not an issue with BBC and Channel 4 taking them separate. I don't think that's an issue at all. But obviously, again, it's like having those equal opportunities is really important to me. I'm just so excited. Like, we're going to be getting the same crowds. I mean, obviously, Paris was really good. But for us para athletes, for example, that go to World Champs, we had no spectators in Delhi for the World Championships last year. And it was streamed on YouTube. There wasn't really much advertisement about it. And so it's just like nice for us to kind of get that platform and get that experience out there because again, like I see myself as an elite athlete. So I expect that elite athlete spectator viewing, but obviously at the same time, the para athletic spotlight isn't as heavy. So there won't be as much viewing. However, if you're at the Commonwealth Games and you're all together, you get that combined viewing. So you get everyone there. And then as well as that, like, I think for me, what I've noticed since becoming a para athlete is able-bodied people who don't have a disability are genuinely intrigued into para athletics. Like last year at the British Champs, my mum said that she was in the stadium watching and she was cheering for me. And then the people below her, they were like, can you explain to us the categories and the point system and things like that? Because we want to understand it, and no one's broadcasting it in the stadium, and they didn't understand what was going on. So like, it's kind of like having that awareness and putting it on that equal platform kind of helps with that.
It's really interesting as well because things like British champs, there's obviously not enough of you guys to sort of put it into separate races for different classifications. And so you bring in things like the Razor point system, and the people watching will have absolutely no clue about what's going on. I mean, even as you cross the line, I don't know how much of an idea you guys will know whether you need to sort of be so close to a certain person, probably. But
Yeah.
and so it's kind of a difficult thing, I guess, for someone to watch at something like British champs and sort of follow along and be like, oh, that person's just won. Because say there's 7 or 8 of you guys in a race, the person that crossed the line in sixth could theoretically have won, depending on the Razor point system. And so that can make it quite difficult to follow along, really.
It's interesting. The only time I've experienced British champs with the Razor point system was 2024 outdoors. And I went from being dead last to winning a bronze medal. And I can't remember if they explained it there. But obviously, for example, last year there was no Razor point system. And this is something I could talk about for a while, because I think it should be there to give the para athletes an incentive. That's a whole separate conversation. I think the Razor point system, there's flaws with it for sure, but I think having it there would give me an incentive. And I think the only reason I'm saying it is probably because it benefits me more, not from a medal perspective, but from a mindset perspective. Because if you don't use the Razor point system, I have to race against Sophie Hahn. Sophie Hahn is a 12.5 runner at her best. I'm not a 12.5 runner. However, I have a Paralympic and world bronze medal. It could be that I rock up on that start line and Sophie Hahn wins, she wins the medal, and it looks like, from the spectator's view, because it hasn't been explained, I crossed the finish line in dead last by 2 seconds, and they're like, well, what's this girl doing here? Like, she's clearly miles below the rest of them. No, I actually would run like a season best or something and be like, wow. Like, I did an interview last year. Last year after British champs, I came last, but I'd just come back from my foot injury and actually had run really well. I was celebrating, really happy. And the person interviewing me, they were like, that's not the performance for you today, because I came last and everyone else was getting medals. And I was like, oh, well, actually I ran quite well.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously, like, if it was explained, there wouldn't be that misconception.
I guess that's maybe where something like the Commonwealth Games, where everything's all under one roof, it kind of forces people to try and find that information in a way, and hopefully
I think they'll put it up there. I think they for Channel 4, they put different categories up. And I don't know how it worked for commies, but
yeah, hopefully it will at least sort of give a bit of an explanation into what the categories are and like who is basically on this track and like what does it mean, what are we watching pretty much. And I think that's also a great way to promote that you will be at the Commonwealth Games this summer. And so I want to close off the podcast by wishing you good luck for that. And thank you everyone so much for listening. I said earlier in the podcast, I also did a episode on parasport classification a while ago with George Bates. You can find that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well if you wanted to give that a listen and learn a little bit more about what that process is like, because I learned a lot of things during that podcast episode that I think a lot of other people would enjoy hearing about as well. But otherwise, thank you so much for getting sidetracked with us. See you in the next episode. Bye!